Everybody, it's Andy, helping you build a career you love. Today we are going to be talking about the 5 worst assumptions to make in a job interview. Let's jump right in because this is a nice full lesson that we're going to go through. And as I mentioned, 5 of the worst assumptions you can make. You can call them myths, lies, assumptions. They're probably a combination of all of these things, but they are those elements of the job interview that leaves you scratching your head when you thought you did well and you didn't get the job and you didn't get hired. Well, today we're going to talk about those. You're going to know what they are, how to overcome them to get hired. So I'm actually going to jump right in. We're going to jump right in with the first one. So this first one, this is kind of maybe it's a myth, maybe it's an assumption, but this one comes from the fact that there are 2 things employers love about recruiting. They love people they know, and they love the path of least resistance. So what those 2 loves do for them is it doesn't always get them the most qualified candidates. So myth number 1 is that the most qualified candidates don't always get the job interview. Now that might not be startling news to you, but the way in which and the tactics you need to overcome that, I think, are important for us to discuss. So let's talk about that because I want you to understand what's actually happening on the recruitment side of the table. So when you think about recruiters and you think about employers, who wouldn't love to get a referral from one of their own employees, somebody they know and love and trust, hopefully, and having that employee vouch for somebody that they know or somebody that they know but is willing to go to bat for this individual? That would be great. I would love those people. We at Mile Walk always want to look at those people, and I'm sure that you all that are hirers that are out there, you would prefer that route too, and even you job candidates, you know it's a much better route to get to the employer. And then that goes along with the fact that recruiters, most corporate recruiters, not all corporate recruiters, but most corporate recruiters are not actually spending time recruiting, even though that's their title. They're fielding the inbound flow of candidates, and the first and preferred route is employee referrals. But the second part of the path of least resistance is the applicant tracking system. So the applicant tracking system, believe it or not, for the employer is the path of least resistance. It might be your path of most painful resistance. But between networking and the applicant tracking system, most corporate recruiters are getting a flow of candidates, so they're just evaluating whoever comes in. That's not necessarily the most qualified candidates. If they wanted the most qualified candidates, they would be reaching out into the field, out into the world themselves, or they're having pushes with their employees or third-party recruitment firms or however it might be. But most of them are not, and you need to be aware of this. So how can you overcome this? So let's take these one at a time. So the first piece about the networking and what you can do to network, I know a lot of you that follow me, you know I talk about networking a lot. I've even gone so far as to tell you exactly how much networking to do based on who you are. So if you've seen my job search masterclass or you've seen my live office hours on why your job search is taking so long, I've talked about that. And what we've done as my recruitment for Mile Walk, gathering statistics from all of the people that we've interviewed over the years, that's more than 15,000 now, we capture data about how they find their job so that we can use those statistics to come up with better tools, better techniques, more information for you. So one thing that I want to share, because I know a lot of people have a question about, well, how much networking time should I spend in relation to all the 5 or 6 other activities that go along with job searching, like looking online and applying and researching companies and all that good stuff. But I want to give you a couple of those stats just so you have a frame of reference. If you are a higher earner, say over 6 figures, you earn more than $100,000, whatever your age, or you are a more tenured professional, so let's say above 50 years old, you have a 46% chance of finding your job through somebody that you know or somebody they know. And if you are, let's say, in the lower earning bracket or a younger professional, you still have 27% of a chance to find your job through somebody you know. So if you take a look at these stats, if you are in the higher earning bracket, you should probably be spending almost 50%, about half of your time networking. And if you are in the lower earning bracket or you are a younger professional, you should still be spending about 25% of your time networking. That will help give you a leg up, hopefully get in through the route of an employer referral or some recommendation or some warm introduction. Then when you think about the other thing that I mentioned, the applicant tracking system, I know some of you, a lot of you, you're eventually going to have to put your resume into an applicant tracking system. Hopefully you have a warm introduction before you need to do that. But regardless of whether you have that warm introduction or you're going in cold, we call it cold traffic, but basically you don't know anybody at the company, you're going to put your resume into the applicant tracking system. There are some things stylistically, there's some matching things that you can do, and also some tools that you can take advantage of that'll help you bolster that resume so you have a better shot of actually getting the job interview. I don't know if you've seen it, but I have a video out there called 3 Free Tools for Your Resume to Beat the Applicant Tracking System. One of them is a webinar that I've developed called 3 Secrets to Get Your Resume Noticed. The other one is my resume content builder. It's a wonderful free giveaway that I give in the free webinar. But the third tool that I like to recommend after you develop your resume, look at the job descriptions for which you want to apply, and then optimize your resume as best you can using the right keywords and all that good stuff, is I love to recommend JobScan. It's not a perfect tool, but it is the best tool I found in the market to allow you to take your resume, import it into its system. It's free, certainly for a while. Import it into its system, and then take the job description from either the corporate website or the job board or wherever you found it and put that into JobScan, and it will give you a number of suggestions based on how closely your resume aligns to that job description. So I like recommending that tool. I will put links to all those videos I mentioned in the notes, but that's the first myth or assumption that people make. Now, you might know that that's the case, and you know you've faced hurdles. I'm sure you've run into these roadblocks, but you got to make sure you're doing the right things, because the employers genuinely love the path of least resistance. They really do. So let's talk about the second assumption. This one, now we're all right. We're a little warmed up. We're getting into the big boys now. Well, the one thing that I want you to know about companies is they don't always know who they seek. They don't know who they seek. I know you're looking at a job description. I'm sure you're looking at their corporate website and you are thinking about, well, this looks pretty in order. I've got all the information. They look like they know what they're doing. It looks like everybody's having fun. But let me tell you something, and let me tell you where I get this from. You know, and I know you've seen me hold up the interview intervention book, but you don't see me hold up this little beauty very often. This book, The Hiring Prophecies, won a gold award for best business careers and sales book of 2016, beat out like 8,000 books. And in this book is more than 10 years of studies, interviews, analysis, data collection, surveys with thousands of companies, tens of thousands of individuals to talk about the most critical factors in hiring the right person. And as I went out and did all my interviewing with these corporations, I personally interviewed more than 200 and some odd, but there were thousands more that contributed data. One thing was very apparent in the conclusions that we drew about the factors that lead to retention success. So not only do I have to recruit the person, but success is not the recruitment itself and hiring the person. The success is hiring a long-standing, successful employee who's happy. So in looking at that and analyzing all that data, there were 4 major components that led to that retention success. And I want to talk about those because it was very apparent that companies did not identify these appropriately as they were evaluating people that they were bringing into their organization. Now, there were 4 of them, but I want to talk about 3 of them very, very quickly. But the 4 of them were cultural fit was number 1 by miles. The second one was capabilities. The third was track record of achievement of the individual, and the fourth one was their particular skill set, so how well they knew the particular job they were being hired for. But there are 3 that I want to talk about right now, and that's culture, capabilities, and skills. We're going to take them over the next couple of minutes, but I want to talk about culture for a second. Imagine And you all, I mean, your employees, a lot of you, some of you are hirers, think about, does your organization actually understand down to the right level of detail what its culture is? So think about what an employer has to do in order to make sure that they're hiring somebody with the right culture for their company. They have to know what the culture is, meaning they have to list it all out, these specific adjectives that go along with defining what the personality of the organization is. So they have to have a list of what those cultural traits are. Then, in addition to the list, they actually need to define each of those components, because just because you have the word doesn't mean we all understand specifically what that word means. And the third thing that they need to do, not only to communicate all of that to everybody, is the interviewers and the people that are interviewing you have to be crystal clear on the questions that they need to ask you in order to elicit the information from you to determine whether you can actually fit the culture. Actually fit the culture. So when we talk about this kind of this myth or assumption number 2 about the company knowing, I want to talk about culture for a minute here. We'll pick up the other ones as we roll through. But when you think about the culture of an organization, if you can demonstrate in the interview that you align culturally, that will go over well. Even if they have not gone to the lengths of prettying up the documentation, identifying all the traits, identifying all the definitions, knowing which questions to ask you, if you, as a job seeker, can extract that information and roll it into your stories that you tell and the responses that you give when you are asked questions, you will definitely be able to overcome the fact that they might not be clear about it or defined it, but you and your goal of being hired, if you like this company, you're going to significantly increase your chances. So the first thing that I want you to do is start looking online to see if you can ascertain what the culture is. Do they speak about the type of people that they're looking for? So notice words like entrepreneurial, leaders, servant leaders, self-starters, ambitious, all whatever they are, welcoming, communicative, these kinds of traits. They may be there, they may not be there. They might even be in the job descriptions. That's great too. But the one thing that you can do is in your lowest risk interview in the process, which is the screen, you are likely exchanging information about you. You're trying to get a little information about the company. You're likely doing it, say 80, 90% of the time, with a recruiter or a human resources professional. You should ask them, could you define the cultural traits of the company? So as you are in this interview and you are trying to gather some information, number one, to see if the company is a good one for you, but also to sell yourself in the process, you're doing a little reconnaissance. So if you're interviewing me, I would say to you, you know, culture is really important to me. I want to make sure that I'm getting with an organization that is culturally aligned with me and I'm culturally aligned to it. Could you give me the top 5 to 10 adjectives you would use to describe the culture in the organization? And could you tell me what you mean by those if there's any room for interpretation? So now the human resources person or the recruiter or whoever you're speaking with will give you their insight, and you could do a little back and forth about what they mean specifically. And let me give you an example of what I mean by how this stuff can have such disparate meaning to all the people you're speaking with throughout the process. If you're interviewing with 10 people, they might have 10 different definitions of what entrepreneurial means and different ways and biases of thinking about it. So if you asked me, if you were interviewing with me and you said, Andy, entrepreneurial, that's great, what do you mean? I would say, here's my definition. I wrote this one, it's my own. This is a person, in my mind, this is a person who has a vision and without regard for resources can make that vision a reality. Can make that vision a reality. So all of my interviewers that were interviewing you would be armed with a question that says, tell me about a time when you had an idea, your organization didn't give you any resources, and you made that happen. If you knew in advance that that question was coming, you'd stay up all night and you'd think about a story. But if you didn't know that that question was coming, you at least now know what it is they're looking for, and you can better package up your response. But if somebody else down the road thinks, well, I just think people that work for small companies are entrepreneurial. That's not true either. And just because you work for large organizations doesn't mean you can't satisfy my definition of an entrepreneur. So you've got to be really thoughtful and diligent about getting this intelligence. But I would definitely get it from the HR person or recruiter early in the process. And then what I would do is I would mirror that and I would give it back to them. It's just called mirroring. But basically you want to give them back what they gave you and tell them why you're entrepreneurial. That sounds great. I'm entrepreneurial. Here's why. Okay, so you can get it in the screen and then use it throughout. And then you can check throughout, but make sure that even if the company's not crystal clear, if they think entrepreneurial is part of their culture, then you are giving them responses that include how you are entrepreneurial. All right, let's go on with those other couple because this leads into myth number 3 or assumption number 3. Don't assume by any stretch that the interviewers know what skills you need, what capabilities you need, and that they know how to evaluate them. Just because somebody's sitting across from you asking you questions and interviewing you, and I'm a senior engineer who codes in Java or C++ or whatever I'm doing, don't assume that I know what skills and capabilities you need to be great at that trade. It's a big mistake because what most people are doing is, number one, you have to realize who these people are, right? They're paid to do their job. They probably have some skills that allow them to do their job effectively, but this is interviewing you. This is a whole different ball of wax. So what most of the interviewers are doing is they're looking for particular skills that you have that match up with what they think you need. So I think you need to know how to code in Java in order to do this effectively. I think you know how to sell consumer product goods to do this job effectively. That's generally what they think. But you can overcome this myth and help them because and think about it. I want to do a little more definition here of what I mean by capabilities. For you to be very good at your job and to grow through the ranks and to be a successful long-term employee, you do need the skills to do the job. However, the studies in here show that capabilities and the foundational abilities for someone are a far greater indication of long-term success. What do I mean by that? So I could choose as a corporate citizen in an interview, if I'm interviewing 3 different engineers, what I would prefer is to hire the engineer that matches most closely with the capabilities that I know that engineer needs to be a long-term employee. So what might those capabilities be? Well, the skills, for example, are, do you know how to code in C++ or Java or whatever your language is, or do you know how to sell this particular type of product or service? That's the skill. But the capability is, do they have the right analytical skills? Are they organized? Have they actually probably seen a variety of different software languages so that they understand how to draw parallels? So they have these foundational abilities that actually transcend whatever their particular job function is as it relates to a technologist designing software. If companies actually reverse engineered the greatest superstars that they have in the organization, they would know what those capabilities are. Then they don't only have to know what the capabilities are, they have to know how to ask questions in order to elicit information from you to determine if you actually have those capabilities. But they don't do that. They don't do that. They take a very superficial look at your skill set. So what can you do? What can you do to shine better when you recognize that these interviewers probably don't really know what those capabilities are? Well, here's what you can do. You can learn what those capabilities are. And how might you do that? Well, the first thing is whatever I am, a project manager, a business analyst, an accountant, a salesperson, it doesn't make any difference. First thing I would do is I would look at the corporate website and I would try to get that culture down. Then I would look at the job descriptions, not only my job description, but all the job descriptions that precede mine, meaning what's the next lower level, then my job, then the next one above it, and so on. And I would look for the traits that they list in the job description, and I would get very familiar if I saw them. So some of them might include in there, want strong organizational skills, want strong analytical skills, would like you to have programmed in a wide variety of languages, whatever it might be. Anything that is not specific to the skill is likely a trait that they're looking for. That's another thing that you can do. And then another thing that I always recommend that you do, it sounds silly, but just Google it. Literally, Google what capabilities make a great whatever. I did this for different professions. I was trying to help people job search in professions that I hadn't really recruited for before, like a chef and some of these others. And it was amazing how many videos, blog posts, articles, books, and other things will come up that tell me a chef needs to have great organizational skills, good stamina, can be a multitasker, and so on. So in addition to knowing that that has too much acidity in it, they actually have to have all these other skills. You could do that. And then what I would do is, as I was preparing for my job interview, I would make sure that I was highlighting how I had those capabilities, whether they were listed on the job description or not. That's going to help you overcome that. And then the other thing that you can do is you want to make sure, and this is a little easier to do, is to map your skills. So your particular hardcore domain skills, the fact that you developed in this software language, the fact that you have sold these particular props, you want to make sure that you are mapping where you've done what they're asking you to do in your responsibilities of the job descriptions. So you want to make sure you're thinking about, where have I done that before, specifically done that, as this will serve as an example of the fact that I have experience doing that specific thing. Capabilities are showing your demonstrated capacity to be awesome in the future. So there's slight difference. So skills, present day, I walk in the door, here's what I can do. Capabilities, here's that fact that I'm a great bet for tomorrow. Okay, so it's important that you understand the distinction there. Let's roll, and let's keep beating up these interviewers, why don't we? Myth number 4, don't think for one second that the interviewer is actually prepared. And I'm gonna cut them some slack here. Let's not be too tough on interviewers. Think about this. These people are thrown in front of you. They're getting paid probably the big bucks to do something other than interview you. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon, and the HR person is chasing down the interviewer to make sure that she's in the conference room on time and has your resume and so forth. And all the interviewer's thinking about is, oh goodness, my boss is yelling at me. I got a client call at 4 and the project deadline at 5. I'm not ready for it yet. So they're very distracted. They are not, right? They didn't recruit you. They don't have an emotional attachment, investment, or anything to you. And they've been given a resume that's probably too long, too thick, cover letters, all this other stuff that you as requisites have to shove in their face. And here they are at 2 o'clock on Thursday interviewing you. And they probably have glanced at your resume. If they've even glanced at it, they've glanced at it for 2 seconds. So what do? They ask you to tell me about yourself and walk me through your resume and all that good stuff. So I want you to know, number 1, you want to make sure that you actually have your resume, because not only might they not have it, they probably didn't look at it, but even if they have it, they probably didn't look at it. So you want to make sure that you have copies just in case they don't have it with them. And then what are they going to do? They're going to ask you to tell me about yourself and walk me through your resume And that's where you should start doing backflips, because they've now turned complete control of the interview over to you. And I'm not going to go into how exactly to do the tell me about yourself and walk me through your resume, because I have videos out there on my YouTube channel for tell me about yourself, best way to respond, and walk me through your resume, best way to respond. They're very popular videos. I'll put the links, in the cards or in the notes or whatever. You'll be able to access them. But you have to have the mindset that they know nothing about you. Don't assume that they've read all your highlights and all your accolades and know all your awards. You've got to assume that they are empty, and you have to educate them completely on who you are, So if you check those videos out, you'll know how to do that. All right, so what I want to do now is I want to talk about, I think I skipped a card. Here we go. All right, fifth myth or assumption is that the employer actually knows what success looks like. Okay, so now I want to hire you, and I need you to be successful, except I'm not even sure what success looks like. And if they don't know what success looks like, you are in real trouble if you take that job, because you don't know what success looks like and you won't know what to do and work toward and how you're being evaluated and all that good stuff. So this comes up every live office hours. It comes up on virtually every webinar that I do live. But here's what I want you to do. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to ask them and then tell them. So ask, then tell. Okay, ask, then tell. And what do I mean by that? One of my favorite questions for you to ask the job interviewer while you're in the interview is, if I or whoever you're going to hire was to come here and work, in 1 year from now, exactly what would success look like? So what will I have accomplished, completed, done that you would consider a raging success? Then what they'll do is, hopefully, they will tell you. But if they don't tell you, you should close up your brief bag and walk out the interview, because you're really going to be in trouble if you take that job. But when they tell you, hopefully they know, if they can tell you or at least speculate or give you an idea of what success in their mind will look like, then what you should do is spend some time, immediately spend some time shifting into storytelling again about exactly how you would accomplish what they told you the goals or the accomplishments would be. And why is this a great idea? Because if you can get them to envision what it would be like to have you working there, and you are actually walking them through what you would do, they will hire you. The person who can shift, the job seeker who can shift the interview into the future and spend more time talking about the future with the employer and what it will be like with them working there and how you will kick butt in that job, that person is going to get the job, because the employer now has a comfort level and they're imagining how you would do it. They could already see you as part of the team. If you are spending more time in the future, this is especially important for senior folks, all you big dogs out there. You got to be spending 80-90% of the conversation in the future. But regardless of your level, the more time you can spend getting them to imagining you working there versus them evaluating your background, the better off you'll do in the interview. If they are spending and you are spending a lot of time explaining yourself and your stories and all that good stuff, they're only getting the fact that of what you did. They're not getting a good inclination of what you can do, and they are hiring you, even though a lot of times they don't think about it this way. They are hiring you for what you can do, not what you've done. Not what you've done. And the best way to be sure about what you can do is for you to tell me how you would do it. Then I can imagine, oh, you will be all right. You'll knock it out. You'll knock it out. So you want to get them shifting to the future. So those are the 5 myths. But I want one more. I want to toss one more in, because this is like super important. And I called it a bonus, but it's really it's like the number one myth. So just like the most qualified candidates don't always get the job interviews, the most qualified candidates don't always get the job. They really don't. So these 5 I just gave you, knowing that the most qualified candidates don't always get the interviews, knowing that the company doesn't know exactly who they seek, knowing that the interviewers don't necessarily know how to evaluate your skills and your capabilities, or that the interviewers are prepared, or that they know what success looks like. And all that is supported by the data in this book. But the real key is that there are a lot of miscommunications during the interviews. And the candidate who can show the employer how she fits and the value she will contribute to what they need at the moment with clear communication is the one who's going to get the job. So to overcome this issue, to make sure that you, as the most qualified candidate, do get the job, or I'll give you all the tricks if you're not the most qualified candidate, I want you to check out the free webinar I have called 3 Keys to Ace Any Job Interview. That's an hour long of coaching. It goes into all this stuff, totally covers it, all the communication tripwires and all that good stuff. All right, so I want to wrap up the teaching portion of this here. So for all of you that are watching this on the recording, thanks for watching. If you like this, hit the thumbs up. Make sure to share this. There's plenty more new videos every week and live office hours on Thursday. Till next week, I'll see you